My name's Chris. I'm a bookseller at Boswell Book Company, and I am glad to have you here virtually in my living room this evening. We're in our kind of shared living room here, so welcome. Today is day 4150 that Boswell has been a bookstore. Here in conversation with Kim Suhr, we're happy to have her back as our conversation partner. She's waving hello. Of course, the director of Red Oak Writing and author of the story collection Nothing to Lose is Randall Kenan. I'm really excited to have him here. I'm going to read you all the bio stats here and then tell you a little bit. Former chancellor of the Fellowship of Southern Writers, author, of course, of A Visitation of Spirits and Let the Dead Bury Their Dead. He's also a biographer of James Baldwin and has written extensively on Baldwin's life and work. And he's here to chat tonight about his brand new story collection, If I Had Two Wings. I read this a couple months ago, absolutely loved it, handed it to Daniel, and Daniel said, I know that name. I have his other book on my shelf. Daniel read it. He loved it too. We said we've got to do something. So that said, I'm going to turn it over. Kim, Randall, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll say a few words and then I'm going to turn it over to Randall as well. And I think I just want to, you covered all the great bio stuff, Chris, but I guess I'd like to add why I kind of suggested to Daniel that it would be lovely to have Randall join us, because I had the good fortune of studying with him in the Solstice MFA program at Pine Manor College in Boston. And a number of folks from that community are here. Hi guys, so good to see you. And I was just thrilled to know that he had a second collection of short stories, because I absolutely adore short stories myself, and especially his. And also I wanted to share him with the writers that I work with at Red Oak, and a lot of them are here tonight too. So hi to you guys, thank you for being here. I'm really excited that you agreed to join us, Randall, especially during this first week of your teaching in the brave new world of teaching online. And I know it's just, it doesn't seem like it, but I know how exhausting that is. So I appreciate you taking the time. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to introduce us to your book and do a brief reading, and then we'll have a little bit of a conversation, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not muted, am I? It's been a while in the making, and I was not thinking about doing another collection, but my agent sort of insisted, and I had been publishing a good many stories of late, and so it made sense. And it takes place in my little town in North Carolina called Timms Creek, and I revisited there, and all sorts of crazy things happen. A man is haunted by a hog. Howard Hughes winds up in Timms Creek. A man goes to New York and runs into a famous musician. And so, yeah, these are, I'll give you a little sample. That's okay. I'm going to give you a little sample. All right. This story is called The Eternal Glory That Is Ham Hocks. My mother did not tell me about Howard Hughes' visit to Timms Creek on her deathbed. She had first mentioned that curious bit of family history several years before, while we were shucking and cleaning ears of corn, fresh from the fields, each kernel pearly white and sweet like candy. Who? I had said absently, thinking I had misread her, focusing instead on how good it was being able to boil these ears up, a bit of salt, a knob of butter. You simply couldn't get that in LA. The radio had been playing, and at the top of the news had been a report about another settlement in the ongoing battle over the will of the late, great, reclusive billionaire. Who's that? I repeated. Howard Hughes, Mama said. Came and asked me to come work for him. I didn't drop the corn exactly, for I believe I had misheard, misunderstood, misinterpreted my mother. but I did squeeze it a tad over much. What do you mean Howard Hughes wanted you to work for him? She had my attention now. Oh, it was a long time ago. We were living back at the other place, in Mama's house. Your daddy was stationed in the Philippines. Your sister was just a little bitty thing. Mama, yes, baby. What are you talking about? She gave me that look that only a woman who has taught elementary school for decades can muster. Howard Hughes wanted me to come work for him. There is a moment when someone you've known all your born days, someone you respect beyond reason, with the force of superstition, there is a moment when that person says something so incredible, it forces you to recalibrate, rejigger, rethink the blueprints of the universe. We had each called around in our heads. Before I could say anything, she said, oh, but that was a long time ago, long time, before you were born. Why didn't you? What? When? Mama, you're joking. No, she picked up another ear of corn. Mr. Thompson grew some pretty sweet corn this year, didn't he? Mama, what? What did Howard Hughes? I paused, not certain if I wanted to know the answer. What did Howard Hughes want you to do for him? She laughed, that laugh I now miss so much. He wanted me to cook for him. Can you believe that? The richest man in the world, shoot. So thank you.
I love that story. And I love the fact that I get to ask you about it. You know, you read these stories that you love and you never get to talk to them. Well, not never, maybe, but so where did that come from? Do you remember?
I had this wonderful teacher. Her name was Doris Betts. She taught here at the University of North Carolina, where I was an undergrad. And we gave a reading together, ironically. And I was joking around, and I said, well, I'm going to, she asked me what was I going to do with Thames Creek next. And I think I was being flippant at the time. I said, I'm going to bring Howard Hughes to Thames Creek. And she would always tease me about that. She thought it was so funny. And it took me quite a while to figure out how. Because he didn't love anybody. He was not going to be it's not going to be a romantic story. And there's nothing there for, somebody that rich to want. I mean, he could probably buy the whole place up. So I had to stop and think for a good long time about what would compel somebody. And even atrocious people like good food. So it made sense.
There you go. There you go. Oh, funny. Now, were you able to share this story then with her, with Doris?
I no. I think actually it was. I had sold it. It came out originally in Plowshares, not Plowshares. Yeah, not Plowshares. Prairie Schooner came out in the Prairie Schooner, okay. And just before that issue came out, she's gone. So.
Okay. Oh, she's in the pages in a bit anyway. So great. Thanks for sharing that. I'll remind everyone, if you have any thoughts that you'd like or questions that you'd like to pop them in the chat as we're talking here, because we'll just keep talking if you don't do that. So it seems to me that maybe letting folks know a little bit about Timms Creek, which is you called it your town. I think you called it your hometown, but it's also a fictional town, right? So do you want to say anything a little about that and where it came from, why you want to go back there in your stories? And
well, the title story, that's a chat. The title story from my previous book, Let the Dead Bury Their Dead, is about how this place was created as a maroon system. So in my fantasy, all sorts of mystical things happen in this small town.
And you weren't done with it, apparently, after one book. You needed to go back. Yes.
Well, I've never stopped writing about it.
Some writers talk about every writer has a primal scream that they just keep going back to and keep re-exploring. Would you say it's Timms Creek or this place or?
Well, a lot of writers I admire do that. I mean, they go back and write about the same place. Garcia Marquez had Macondo. Carlos Fuentes had Mexico City. and so that's what I aspired to do.
Mhm.
My primal scream was probably something I can't say in public.
Chris told us anything went. Well, thank you for that. I have to tell you, when I got my book and I saw what the first story was, I was just so excited because you read this story while I was at school at Solstice. And
Oh my
I loved it.
goodness, really?
I loved it so much that I said, would you please send it to me? Because I want to read it after hearing you read it, which was fantastic. But there's so much. I love the humor in it. I love the character, of course, Dear Ed in New York City from Timms Creek, and just how he just accepts what comes to him. And folks who haven't read it don't know, but he meets an icon from the 80s who we might not expect him to befriend. I'd love for you to talk about writing, the humor in your writing. Do you set out to be funny? Does it just happen?
Well, I admire it. I mean, that's the kind of fiction I like. I really, I mean, there are a few writers who are very, very somber and serious. And I feel a lot of people think that fiction needs to be that way, but it doesn't. I mean, Zora Neale Hurston can have you in stitches. Alice Walker, she can be very, very funny. And Flannery O'Connor. How could I forget Flannery O'Connor? I mean, I joke with my students that my favorite, I'm not joking actually, but at the end of A Good Man Is Hard to Find, after he shoots the grandmother, and he says, she'd have been a good woman if there was somebody there to shoot her every day of her life. I mean, you can only put that into the head of a serial killer, into the mouth of a serial killer.
Right. Her humor is pretty dark, I'd say.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
I don't know that I would characterize your humor as that dark, but I get it. I get the comparison. Oh, great. So while we're on short stories, I'm really interested in what it is about short stories that attracts you as a writer, as a reader.
I feel that of all the forms, they require a certain compression, and I like the idea of I mean, I revise a great deal, so I can reread it, twice or three times that day. A novel, you can't do that, or my long nonfiction. I couldn't read the whole thing, in one sitting, and so that appeals to me. And I also think that the form, when done right, is close to poetry. I mean, think of structurally and again, the matter of concentration. So that appeals to me.
Yeah. And what about, like I've been thinking about it lately. I have a really hard time and maybe it's pandemic, I don't know. But as a reader, I have difficulty sustaining my attention. Any thoughts about whether now is a extra good time for readers of short stories versus longer works? Or
if you had told me in December that I was going to be sitting home alone for how many months has it been now? 4 months. Yeah. And I would not have read every book in my house that I haven't read, I would just laugh at you. I mean, it seems so counterintuitive, but yeah, I'm a little distracted.
Yeah.
And I probably am reading more nonfiction than fiction right now. I can't explain why that is.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously this book was written before that. Are you able, what are you writing these days?
I should have finished a novel. I promised my agent I was going to have a novel done by the time this sucker came out. But like I said, I haven't been able to work in this under this.
So that's
pressure.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I've talked to lots and lots of writers who have the same experience. They're like, I should be writing and writing and writing, and they're having a hard time getting it done. So,
well, I heard a very, I should say, wise or sage therapist say, that you should just forgive yourself, and keep going.
Kind of own it too, I think, is part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So not all of us have an agent who's asking us to write a short story collection, but you do. And I'm curious about how this collection, if at all, changed in the publishing process. Did they take every story you offered them? Did they keep them in the same order? Any?
Well, actually, the last story,
Mhm.
which just came out in O Magazine, he said immodestly.
I saw that. Yeah, that's right.
My editor actually asked me to write that story. So yeah, it was the only one just made for the book.
So what was the assignment? Just write a story, or was there something specific?
We sort of brainstormed, and I had already been thinking about hurricanes, so I wanted to write something about a hurricane. And my sister had gotten caught down in Barbados during, I can't remember the hurricane's name, but we live in Hurricane Alley, so there's always we just had one. So
Right. Yeah. So Rick Carr says hello, and that it's good to see you.
good to see you too, Rick.
Yeah, and he says I like the challenge of having to contain a short story so I can relate to what you said about compression. It adds to the excitement of the process. Do you find it more challenging to create a series of short stories, or is it more challenging to write a novel, and why?
I think it's more challenging to write a novel because, well, the way I've been approaching it, I'm always writing about almost always writing about the same place. And so it's stitched together by a sense of place, and the fact of place and that sort of thing. Whereas I love novels, and I have this theory that, and this is going to make me sound like I'm obsessed with small things, but small novels are the best novels. I think because they can be perfect. You think of Willa Cather's A Lost Lady. You think of Toni Morrison's Sula. You think of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's Chronicle of a Death Foretold. It's the shorter novels that, again, you can read it almost seamlessly. I have a student now reading Chronicle of a Death Foretold, and he can read it in no time.
And in terms of
The Great Gatsby. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. And then in terms of ordering them, does that come very naturally to you? Does it kind of make itself known to you very easily, or is that something that you struggle through? What comes first? What comes last?
I let my editor decide that until I have strong feelings. Okay. And then I make the case that no, that doesn't need to be there.
Until you have strong feelings, and then you win, right?
Yeah.
Good. Great. I would love to know. I'd love to hear you talk about. So in your first book, there is an RK in this last story, and there's a Randall Kenan in this book. Mm-hmm. Using your own name in a work of fiction. I'm so interested in why you did that, or what your choices were behind that. That's fascinating to me.
I'm always fascinated by that. I think the first writer I know who did that was Marguerite Duras. And then there was a period later in his life before he retired that Philip Roth was doing that all the time. And I remember when I read, I think it's Sabbath Theater, I was like, what the hell is this man doing? It just didn't make any sense. And so it's always stuck in the back of my head to do that. And so when I was going to write about this house, which is haunted, since I grew up in a haunted house, who better to live in there than me?
And how close is this character to you as a character then? Did you go far afield, or?
A lot. I hew pretty close to the factual stuff, except I don't have a 17th century house. It's only 100
all
years
detail.
And but otherwise, I played fast and loose. Everything was about the story. Really. It wasn't about.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, fun. Okay, so another thing that I'm wondering is in the Acts of Velma Jean Swearington Hoyt, you give us 4 different endings, and I'm so intrigued by those potential endings from different perspectives, and I love that, and I was interested in where that came from.
Well, I've been asked to write a story for a collection of stories about the Bible, and they wanted us to go in and find a book of the Bible and modernize it, so to speak. And I've always been fascinated by the Gospels, Matthew, Luke, John. No, I think, but the ones that tell the same story.
Okay, right.
So you get these different versions of Jesus, and so that's what that's why it's called the Gospel of.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I love it. So there's another story that I found so much humor in. It was very funny.
Well, I mean, the Gospels are full of miracles, and it just occurred to me that if I switch the gender and I, just let it go, see what would happen in the that would have been the 20th century, not the 21st century. But what would happen if a person who created miracles suddenly showed up on the scene?
Right, and how would the people around them react, and what would they how they exploit it? Yeah,
you can only approach it with humor. I think if you were very, very somber about it, it would just lose its juice.
Right, yeah. Oh, fun. I love that. Someone asked about whether you spent your youth in a place like Timms Creek and how that influenced your writing.
I did. Timms Creek is pretty much based on Chinquapin. I think as I've gotten older, and I think about my youth, I think about food. That's why I write about food now. And this is full of food. And I think the character of that life is really defined by food. I mean, I hate so many things about this pandemic, but I missed blueberry season. I missed corn season. And my sister has these gorgeous tomatoes. I would love to get that some. But yeah, I think the food has been a huge impact. And this book is full of food imagery, as you heard.
Right. And
strawberry season, that's the other.
Well, and that's like, maybe that's how we can chart the pandemic. It's like, yeah, we missed strawberry season, we missed blueberry season, we missed corn. What's going to be the next one? Yeah.
I don't know how urban people will do it, but
So the question about place and your childhood and all of that makes me think about, I loved this. One character says to another, I don't remember which story it was, I'm sorry, but says to the other, do you miss North Carolina? And the other character answers, only when I'm there. And I would love to hear you talk about that.
You're the second person who's asked me that question.
Wow.
I didn't realize that line was that provocative.
It's amazing.
Well, it was true. I did. I moved south after I lived in Italy, and they would show that show with Sarah Jessica Parker.
I'm not a TV
Sex
person.
in the City.
Can somebody help us out?
And I would miss it then. And then when I went back to New York to visit, I was on some boards and things, and I would miss it then. So I mean, it's very. I mean, I was reminded of what it was like when I lived there. So.
Right. And now you're living in the state of your growing up. Hood.
Yeah.
So do you miss it now that you're there?
I can always miss home because I live 2 hours away from home. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Connie says she grew up in a haunted house too.
Oh.
All right.
What is Connie? I don't see Connie.
She's waving. So, there's Connie Malloy. Are you waving there, Connie? I don't know.
Okay, hi, Connie. Can I ask where?
I'm asking Connie to unmute.
Yep.
There she is.
Ottumwa, Iowa. So
Oh,
southeastern
wow.
Iowa.
Ah,
Yes.
that
And
must be-
and I have started writing a lot about the little hauntings that happened in my house.
Oh,
So
that sounds
yeah.
thrilling.
Pardon?
That sounds thrilling and fun.
Yeah, it has been very fun.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was excited when you said that, because I don't know if everybody would cop to that, if it's their reality or not.
Because people think you kind of.
Well,
I
yeah.
I get away with it because I'm a fiction writer. So when people just think
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I tell my students I get paid to lie for a living.
Very good.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Would you like to talk at all about your nonfiction work that's particularly, I think, insightful and interesting in light of our society's conversation or lack of conversation about race?
The timing is interesting because I was just asked to write something about LitHub, a letter from Chapel Hill, and I couldn't figure out what to do about it. And I'm halfway through it now, and I'm writing about the Confederate monuments coming down and this amnesia anyway. I did this really long book called Walking on Water, in which I interrogated the idea of Blackness. And so I traveled all over North America and interviewed a couple of hundred people, which is a great way to learn the country, A, and B, I found out what people were thinking. And it's weird to think about that era now, because you know what? I was explaining to somebody who wasn't even born that I was in Atlanta the night Rodney King was beaten, and I had a book coming out. I was in Atlanta at the CNN building when the verdict came back from Simi Valley, and they had all the riots, which just makes this really weird kind of a parallel juxtaposition. But that was, a long time ago, and it feels like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, and the book was came out in 2002, right? 2000 also.
You mean Walking on Water?
Your book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the last 20 years, I'm sure it's hard to maybe it's not, put yourself back there. Were there things that you explored in the book that, now you say, oh, told ya? Or were there things that you couldn't have imagined at that time?
You know what? I'm being so nostalgic, but I was in Atlanta to the first time to interview this group of young activists at the Atlanta Clark University called SAE, S-A-A-E,
Mm-hmm.
and they were modeling themselves on the Black Panther Party, and they were doing it very successfully, I might add. The piece was very laudatory. But guess who I went to the shooting range with?
That question alone is provocative. Who did you go to the shooting range with?
I went to the shooting range with Stacey Abrams.
Oh my gosh!
Undergrad. So yeah, all these parallels. So groups like that were precursors to Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's a certain continuity there, and they were talking about the same things then,
Fascinating. Laura Heiler, I was going to offer her do you feel like asking it yourself, Laura, or shall I just go for it? I think oh, there she is. Oh, I'd have to ask her to unmute. Laura, would you like to ask your question? There she is.
Sure. Yeah, I was just, you sort of started to touch on this as I started to write, but I was just wondering, as a writer who is on lockdown, as well as dealing with, the pandemic and the isolation, and then sort of following all of the news and seeing all the developments, I'm wondering, how is that influencing your aesthetic as a writer? So is it more difficult to write, stay on target? Does it influence the body of work that you're currently working on?
I think that's going to be something we think about later. I mean, it's hard to see what's happening right now, if you know what I mean, because we're so stuck in it. What I don't want to read are a bunch of novels about sitting at home alone. That's not going to be compelling fiction. But I think if you think about the election, you think about all of the biochemistry that's going on, if you think about what's happening in the streets, I mean, this is going to be an epic era. But we don't know how it's going to end. So I think that could make some great material. But right now, I'm just too. I mean, this is really freaking me out, doing book tours online. So yeah, I think later down the line it will influence us all.
Right. And yeah, we need a little bit of distance for perspective. Although some people are like writing like crazy right now. I'm not one of them.
I'm not one of them.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you are either.
And I wonder, I worry about what they're writing about. We'll see.
Yeah, interesting. We have someone else who had a question about, can you reflect on the minority tax where Black people are being asked suddenly to help white people understand what Black people think? How, as a writer, do you respond when asked to write essays and perspectives from a Black perspective?
This is going to sound very caustic, but Toni Morrison was asked about that all the time, around the time she wrote Song of Solomon. And she basically said, if you want me to teach me, you're going to have to pay me.
Oh, there you go. And pay me well.
Yeah, well, she got paid very well. I mean, that is a little caustic, but I mean, and I do that with my students. You get into really deep conversations and that sort of thing. And of course, your friends. I think one of the things that's happening to me now, I don't know how other people are experiencing this, is that it's very easy to talk past somebody. It's very easy to be misinterpreted. And I don't know, I mean, I have been a student of African-American history since I was, a little bitty boy, basically. And I just had a conversation with Tyree Jones because I was really perplexed by how popular 1619 became, because I knew all this stuff. And eventually I said, oh, Tyree, guess what? It was written for white folk. It wasn't written for me. So I think it's important for people to educate themselves. And you can't hide behind fear. And I think one of the things that was happening before this was that people avoided the topic of race. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had our diversity, and every several weeks they meet, and professors meet and talk about, how to make things more diverse, this, that, and the other thing. And this one political science professor confessed, he said, I cannot get them to talk about race. They do not want to talk about race. They hate talking about race. And I think we're at a moment now where that's going to be less true, but at the same time, there's going to be cases for misunderstanding.
Sure. Yep. Well, and listening,
we're afraid of that. We have to be, courageous and just do it.
Right. Well, and two, it's not as if there isn't plenty of information out there and plenty of thought being written. I mean, if people want to become educated on it, there's really not a good excuse not to be.
But I always had this feeling. I forgot, there was a radio commentator who was interviewing somebody, and she lost her temper, and she was just tired of men. This was based on an article that was in the New York Times. She was tired of men not reading books by women because they didn't think they were for them. And she was tired of white people not reading books by Black folk because they didn't think there was anything in it for them. And I think that is what has kept a lot of people away from learning what things they should know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. So if I don't see any other chat questions, though there's still time, folks. If you, here's somebody. Someone who was involved in the open housing marches and civil rights events. We lost Dr. King during those years. The open awareness of the situation seems to be cyclical, although always subtly there. Where is our power as writers to help break the cycle?
Well, it's interesting you say that because there's been a resurgence of interest in Ralph Ellison of late. And if you read Invisible Man, I think it's in the first chapter. He certainly comes back to it in the end. But he says that history is not a circle, history is a spiral. So, I mean, that's the way I think about it. And that's why I'm so impressed by the continuity of, from the Black Panthers to say to Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And is that really circular, or is it spherical? I don't know.
Oh, I was going to say, well, you hope so, because if it is a circle, you just keep ending up on the same, in the same place in the circle, right? It has to be
right back where you started from.
It has to be going somewhere. Well, thank you for your insights on all of these questions. It's very, very helpful. I would like to, I think someone wanted to expand on your experience of misunderstanding. And maybe I think that's going back to looking at talking past each other, or once you break down the barrier to talking about race, then you're opening potential understandings. Yeah.
And I think that it's not only language, but it's priorities. People have different priorities, and they don't see. I mean, I had a friend who just moved to Colorado, and she was always furious. I mean, she was Chinese. She was always furious about microaggressions. And I think those sorts of things can be easy. And we have to learn how to, and I could do it to somebody. I can do it to a white person just as easily. And so we have to be, I mean, it's weird to say we have to be less sensitive, but when we want to be more sensitive to people. But maybe I need to find another word.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Listening, your answer there started with language, and one of the questions was kind of about our responsibility or our power maybe as writers, and maybe part of it is harnessing the right language of empathy and that sort of thing. And I don't know.
You think it is?
I hope so. We gotta hope so, right?
No, I mean, did you say, did I mishear you? Did you say it's hard to write language of empathy?
That it's necessary, that's going to be what's going to,
yeah. Sorry, I don't have a Bose speaker here.
No, that's okay. But that, I mean, when we think about our role as writers, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
To provide that empathetic language.
Well, I know so many lawyers, and particularly women lawyers, who became lawyers because they were inspired by To Kill a Mockingbird. So, I mean, she essentially spawned a whole generation of female lawyers. So, right. I mean, that's
flawed though the book is, right? We could be very offended by that book also.
Well, I haven't seen Sorkin's play. I've been stuck in my little town. But I understand that he found a way to tell the story and I also knew Horton Foote, who wrote the screenplay for the movie. And I think that there's so many ways to look at that movie, and you can be offended. And that's another example of people having different priorities.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I thought we're getting down on time, but I'd like to shift gears. I've got a question in the chat, but I'm going to ask you after. I thought we'd do a little lightning round. Just really quick lightning round, really quick answers. You don't have to feel like you have to expound, but I'm just curious. I've got 7 of them, and then I will ask Jane Cawthorn's question, an old Blast from the Past from Pine Manor. Okay, number 1, first draft, handwritten or computer?
Handwritten.
Excellent. Books. What book do you find yourself recommending to others a lot lately?
A new book or old book?
Doesn't matter.
I'm always trying to get people to read Moby Dick, and they look at me as if I just had a cow.
That was not what I expected. So maybe that's the cow look. I don't know. What is your favorite story in this collection? If I had 2 wings, your favorite?
I probably would say Resurrection Hardware.
Okay, very cool.
Because it was something new. I had not done that before.
Uh-huh. Excellent. Most difficult story in the collection to write? The one that vexed you?
The first one. It took me years. I wrote half of it on the plane, longhand, and it took me years to figure out how to end it.
Okay, I hear you. Well, and I heard it probably it was probably 2014 or 15, so it took a while, but that's okay.
It
was worth it. It was worth
it. I've used a lightning round. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You're the guest. You talk as much as you want.
I'm a great fan of Catherine Ann Porter, and I was reading through her letters near the end of her life, and she published this story called Holiday, and she wrote this letter to her nephew saying, "It took me 50 years to write that story."
Wow.
It'd be really, depressing.
Yeah.
She said it took her a long time to figure out what the story was really about. So
the aboutness. That's the thing that gets us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Favorite story written by someone else?
I might have to go to a novel for that. I mean, I jump on O'Connor. Well, no. Alice Munro, Miles, Montana. Miles, Montana by Alice Munro.
Cool. I know people are taking notes on this. So what is, a writing dream that has come true for you?
I'd say just getting published.
Cool, very cool. And a writing dream that has yet to come true?
Well, I probably the truest thing is finishing this novel I've been working on for a long, long time.
Okay, very cool. Well, and then we hope that comes true soon too, because I can't wait to read it. A couple of questions and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Jane Cawthorn says,
thank you for inviting me.
It is taking, it appears you're talking to us from your office. Is there something in your office that you have around that you use to inspire you that you can share with us?
My Wi-Fi at home is really, really cranky. So I came in to get better Wi-Fi. What is this? I grew, can you see this? I grew this plant from a little sprig.
Nice.
And yeah, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it. It's lovely. Nice.
Okay, good.
Cool.
So yeah, I love growing things.
Nice. And is this the office where you don't write in this office, do you, or do you?
Sometimes.
Okay. Cool. It's always fun to see writers like in their homes and where they do their stuff. And then one final question is, which aspect of James Baldwin's writing do you think influences your own work the most? Or maybe it doesn't at all.
I resisted Baldwin for a long time because I thought there was going to be too much of a comparison, and that I was chasing after him or that sort of thing. But when I first read Go Tell It on the Mountain, the way he fused the King James Version of the Bible with his own language and his own idioms really, really appealed to me. I mean, that was, top of mind in many ways. Because I didn't realize you could do that. But I think when I first read him, I didn't realize that he had been a youth minister. So he had memorized huge swathes of the Bible.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
And what was it? 10 years ago, that was the anniversary of the King James Bible. because it was very close to the anniversary. I mean, like the 400-year anniversary of the Bible. And it was Shakespeare was the same, or they were very
Oh,
close.
right. Yep, they were. Yeah.
But I just think that is so enriching that those languages.
Nice. And so another work that we haven't talked about, and we're going to run out of time, but I'm so intrigued by it, is the Fire Next Time, which is a memoir / analysis, right? Reaction to his work.
Yeah, the Fire This Time. Yeah.
Yeah, the Fire This Time. Right.
He was
in response to the Fire Next Time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that book is again, it's not that long, and I just think it's easier to do that. And he was writing about, ironically, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, and so yeah, I write a little bit about that. But the really extraordinary thing about that book is the last long paragraph. And so it was meditation on what you were talking about earlier, empathy and love, and how we get out of this thing. And he quoted Malcolm X, what are we going to do with all this beauty? So, because near the end of his life, Malcolm X became much more loving. And if you read the end of the autobiography of Malcolm X, where this white man sees him at the airport, and X thinks he's going to, berate him. He comes toward Malcolm X, and he just sort of waves and thanks him, and So I mean, he died with a very, I don't want to say pure, but a very hopeful vision of what we could become.
Nice.
And that was 50-some years ago. we were still working on it.
We're still on the spiral. Yes,
we're still working on it.
Yeah. What are we going to do with all this beauty? What a lovely thought to end on. I think that's where we should end. I'd like, these guys didn't sell it hard enough. I'd like to encourage all the folks who are here tonight to buy this wonderful book and support your local indie booksellers, especially Boswell, who have been so generous and kind to writers and supporting them. And if not Boswell, someone else local nearby who's fighting the good fight to keep bookstores open. So thank you so much for being with us, Randall.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us. And thank you, Kim. So this made it, so wonderful. And I think, was it Peter Pan who said, say hello to all my friends on shore?
Like I said, I absolutely love this book. This has been fantastic. Thank you both. And thank you all for being here. We would not have a bookstore, virtual or otherwise, without you.
Here,
bless
here.
You, bless you. You were doing the work of the angels. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
You bet. Thanks for being here, Randall. Good luck with the book and good luck with your semester.
Thank you. This is an adventure. Who knew how to do this?